coming after you. They are going to find you. They are getting ready right now. You will not see it coming.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another video, and today I found a pretty cool game that I wanted to talk about called Life's Purpose. So without further ado, let's get into it. Upon entering the game, we stand in a white void with a very familiar problem, the trolley problem. On one hand, there are 4 people, and on the other lays only one, with a lever to determine who will die and who will be saved. Everybody knows the dilemma already of the trolley problem, but here it's just a little bit different. From the skies comes down a red orb that greets us and tells us of this particular situation. Right off the bat, it's clear to notice that the orb speaks in a very wacky style of text, highlighting how it might not take these dreams or sequences seriously. The orb begins to target the one lonely guy on the tracks, calling him a loser, detailing how he's lost everybody, because nobody likes a loser. It goes on until it reaches a strange note that the person on the tracks is a serial killer, and the reason why everyone hates him is because of that. The orb then stops trying to type in a very wacky style before saying it's okay for him to die, right? There's another part wherein the orb also explains that the person turned his back on the world because of the bullying he suffered, because he believed that the world did the same to him. The orb moves on and still attempts to convince you to pull the lever, even making a little lighthearted joke by changing the Roblox figure, before it ultimately forces you to pull it, making the guy beg for mercy before his untimely demise at the hands of the trolley. Waking up in the real world, we find out that it's midday before our character desires to go outside. It's striking that the character does not dictate his moves, even saying, "Let's go get some fresh air," implying that he's well aware that we are controlling him and that he's kind of taken this in a mutual sense, including us in his activities and instructing us on where he wants to go. Going outside, we discover a couple of things about the character. The character moved up the hill because the villagers kept harassing him, and it reached up to the point where one of them was planning an attack on him. And on a potential related note, which we'll mention later, he is ill. He never describes what his illness is, but it is part of this long-winded rant. And just as he keeps going on in this rant, he explains why he hates everyone down there and how they pick on him, how they're corrupt or untrustworthy. His hate eventually boils over to just tell us that he wants to go to the cave. As we go in, it shifts us into first person, and we begin to walk slowly as we make our way deeper into the cave. In the center, there is a stone formation that looks like a pillar, and when we look on what's behind it, we discover that there's a dead guy being held up by a spear, bloodied. Text then appears stating he got what he deserved, and upon getting that, we then need to make our way outside the cave, wherein a dog appears, barking at us until it runs away. The night seemingly ends before we once again wake up to fireworks, for which our character comments on how the village people are just doing this to annoy him and how they're doing it on purpose, and how he could do something like throw a rock at someone and game end them, cryptically stating that at least this time, no one will think it was me. The night officially ends with him going to sleep regardless of the fireworks, and another dream beginning. In the dream, we learn the context of the world being that there is a war going on. We don't know how long it's been or if it's even finished, but that there is/was a war. The orb talks about a soldier named Boris, with him as the primary subject of the orb's comments. He talks about how Boris signed up to join the army because all of his friends were doing the same, and how now he wasn't even trained. He was just given a rifle, told good luck, a pat on the back, and as the orb talks about this, Boris is ended right in front of us. The orb talks about how Boris could have simply lived should he had been born later or just never signed up, but how it's kind of cowardly, or how he would have been called a coward should he had not signed up, before becoming pretty serious, basically saying that if these men don't fight, then everything them and their nation has will be destroyed. And so for that reason, they must do everything they can to protect their loved ones, for without victory, there is no survival. He stops being serious and basically tells you to do the same thing. He pats you on the back, tells you to go charge at the enemy, and the dream ends as you do so. Waking up, it's morning, and the character comments that the dreams are getting pretty realistic. It's not super hard to notice, but as he's saying this, there is a weird lady looking at us through the window that disappears as we realize that something is off. Heading to the cave, we see the same lady, and we tell her not to go in, to which she probably decides to go in, and upon seeing the corpse, she spawns right behind us in terror, and text appears saying, "I need to kill her." A chase ensues wherein she goes into her home, nowhere to be seen except for a cat that greets us at the door, which promptly jump scares us. Our character starts to panic as he's been caught and starts talking about how he could have done a better job at burying the guy, but isn't super worried as he just comments that if she comes back, well, she'll just have to do the same thing he did to the man. The next part is a bit weird as he comments this, considering that weird smiling heads appear in the sky with a text appearing saying your secret is out. And upon entering your house, red text states, do you believe there's more good people than bad people? Before going to bed and going to sleep. Cue another dream sequence. In the dream, there's a guy laying in some jail. It turns out that he's a good guy, but was put in by other good guys. The main idea of the dream is that what he's been doing is essentially living, but he's essentially dead on the inside as he's rotting in his cell, having been put there for so many years with the threat of constantly dying being on his mind every day. And, like I said before, that on the inside, this dude is basically dead. Our guy is posed a question upon this situation. If you were to end up in this exact situation, good or bad, would you choose to be a bad guy? This happens before the guy on the floor says something and eventually breaks the jail, revealing 3 faiths: Buddhism, Islam, and Christianity. Waking up, your character is worried. He knows he's been caught and plots to basically end the lady who caught him, but it's already too late. Going to the cave, there is a black rose that tells our character that the villagers are coming to remove him and that he's running out of time. Our character basically states that they'll never find the body, and upon leaving, he worries that someone is watching him. It's later revealed that the moon has changed into a face, and our character, upon seeing this, seems to carry some regret before he goes into a dream saying, my sin will forever haunt me. He also attempts to mention that he wants to end the suffering and break the curse, with there being perhaps a potential out, before we cue another dream sequence. The last dream is on a random plane of existence. It's never really explained where. It's a few short jumps and it's a small lobby, but once making it to the other side, we encounter a monk. This is the only time we really get a lot of exposition as to who or what our character has endured. He's a man who's lost it all. He has no family or friends, considering they all passed away in a massive tsunami, with our character being the only one who made it. We also get a short introduction to Buddhism, or more so just concepts of Buddhism, as when the monk is asked what the purpose of life is, the monk describes the purpose of life is to reach happiness and to reach nirvana by giving up everything that we possess. Our character does not want to give up what he possesses though, most particularly the memories of his loved ones. And once being told the concept of karma and rebirth, he tells the monk that he wants to prove the idea of karma and rebirth by ending the monk's life, asking if that's karma for him, to which, well, the monk tells him sure, why not? And, well, our character does so accordingly, ending the dream as we had essentially killed the monk. Going to the cave, we finally see the corpse is gone, and text appearing that today is the day, before we get our last segment. Before we get the ending, the character's father appears. Our character and his father begin to discuss what the purpose of life is. Initially, the father's pretty dismissive of the question, but he kind of gets into it by just saying that in this world, there are 2 types of people. The good people, who will try to build something and are happy with it, and the bad people, who are those who are happy by destroying things that are built or made. And he kind of calls it the dynamic of the selfish and selfish. The character's father then asks if our character has done anything stupid since he's died, to which our character says he doesn't know, but is reassured by his father that he's a good kid and goes on a talk about bad people and how our character has to persevere against them and to be a good person in the end. Ironic given that after this, the scene cuts back to him in front of the village, burnt to the ground. Our character seems to have some guilt, and the consciousness comes once again to tell us that no one would know what he did, considering, well, everyone's dead. Our character wants to leave and repeat the cycle again, but he labels it as a rebirth, just as the monk said, with the ultimate desire that he wants to be good this time and break the cycle, ending the game on that note. From what we get from the story, it's pretty clear that this isn't the first time that our character has done this. There's a lot to discuss that I think this game tries to mention or go more in depth on, such as questions over ethics, religion, the system of imprisonment, right and wrong, guilt, and most importantly, what's the purpose of life? And whilst there is a deeper meaning to the game that I think the creator does want people to take away from it, and I highly recommend you play, when it comes to the story beats, some of these parts are just kind of out there And for the most part, I want to just cover what is going on specifically in the character story to better explain these concepts as a surface introduction. What we witness within this game is a rebirth and endless cycle of misery that our character has put himself into. To give a rough timeline of how everything starts, it all starts after the death of his family and friends in the tsunami incident that is mentioned to the monk. He presumably becomes orphaned or tries to live with other relatives, but it's unknown where exactly he was. During this time, though, he develops survivor's guilt, feeling guilty over the fact that he is alive whilst everyone else he knew and loved is dead. And this is greatly emphasized in the first dream and in the war dream, as the first dream showcases him removing the decision for him to live, which we know that the one person on the tracks is essentially him, due to how he sees himself as unworthy of living, partially because, yes, he is a serial killer, but also probably because of the guilt he feels by having lived in comparison to his entire family or friends, believing that perhaps they were more justified in living compared to him. The second dream, being the war dream, showcases how he might have sat the war out, being the coward by not signing up, seeing others fight and die, perhaps more of his friends or people that he thought about or knew, such as Boris. Though this one's objectively more of a theory than anything else. Whilst it's not exactly said what his breaking point was that eventually made him a serial killer, it did seem that in the first village, the beginning of the cycle was that he attempted to be friendly to the villagers, he stayed in a home of his own, but later on became very paranoid of his neighbor, often thinking that they were going to treat him poorly, or that perhaps they did treat him poorly, eventually leading to him to lash out, leading to one thing to another, and, well, the entire village gets destroyed, ending everyone there. This is the first of an unknown string of other villages that he does this to till we meet him in the village he's in. The cycle kept repeating, wherein he was treated poorly, and doing the same thing again and again eventually led him to where he is now. With him now being sick, which could be a physical illness of some kind. It's never really mentioned what it is, but I do believe that he is sick, potentially from the string of villages that he's burnt to the ground, kind of carrying with him. Perhaps it's guilt as well. Anyway, his dreams also follow this part of his life, following this endless cycle. The first being an interpretation of his survivor's guilt, the second one being his thoughts on war, the third being about our character's fears of being caught over his actions of game ending the guy, asking about whether or not it would have mattered if he was good or not, because the ending, being that he probably will be on death row, is the exact same. So does it even matter if he was a good person or not? And also the potential of him being caught due to the girl who escaped him. Even more so, considering that even after the incident, he constantly laments over his actions and longing to be good. I think the third dream is new, considering that the rest of the towns and villages he was in probably never really caught him, and if they did, they would quickly meet the same fate of the man on the spear, making her probably the first to escape. The monk dream coming next, I think, is the one that's very interesting, as it provides him with an out for his actions, being for him to rebirth himself and try again, repeating the cycle of misery till he actually improves. But he kind of ignores the concept of karma that the monk told him, being that his bad actions and his desire to never forget his family are going to come back to haunt him because he hasn't moved on. He isn't properly able to actually change if he's not willing to make sacrifices or perhaps face the reality that he's in, perpetuating the cycle of misery that will inevitably lead him to messing up big time and getting caught, even if he says that he wants to be good. By the end of it, it's not meant to be hopeful. The ending is not meant to be hopeful, but kind of tragic considering he's going to repeat the cycle as he has countless times before. As for the other aspects of the story, such as the weird things that we see like the black rose, the moon turning into the weird head thing, the floating white heads, and the text randomly appearing, I think it's more so to represent the descent into madness that our character has. So he could just be imagining things due to his stress of not catching the girl and perhaps the illness that he mentioned, progressing and getting worse as he begins to realize what he must do. And with that, the story is just that, an endless cycle that will continue to haunt the character till he dies or gets caught, which, whilst this seems to be the first slip up, he's getting closer to being caught. even like with the third dream, asking himself if it really matters for him to be good, if he's just gonna get caught and be thrown into death row. Because if he changes, nothing really changes in the grand scheme of things. He will be arrested and he will be caught and he probably will be killed. So does it even matter if he's a good person or not? And I think that's really what the character tries to do. It's a character that doesn't want to change and is an embodiment of really what not to do. He answers that question. He knows that there are more good people than bad people because he himself is a bad person. And he knows that even if he wants to be a good person, nothing's going to change. He answers every question that he does in a bad way, in a way that he ultimately knows he won't change. And with that and the context that this isn't the first time, I think the character hasn't really changed. And life's purpose truly showcases that. Whilst there is a lot more to discuss, such as the deeper topics of the dreams, I think that this is a pretty good scratching of the surface into those deeper topics. If you do want to see a video like that where I go more in depth as to what life's purpose is, or at least what it tries to showcase beyond just the story, I would love to. Of course, I would do it with the support of, so leave a like and a comment for that. But beyond that, this has been Life's Purpose, the story explained. I've been Top Hacking. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye.